Good morning from Warsaw. It's 9:30. I think we can start our session for today. Welcome everyone. My name is Bartosz from Microfinance Center, and welcome at the third webinar of Business Continuity Planning Series. It is being implemented under the EaSI Technical Assistance Program. As usual, at the beginning, a few words about the EaSI program. It's financed and managed by European Commission. There are two standards of technical assistance that are offered under this program. One of them is being implemented by the consortium of three institutions: Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, the Microfinance Center, and European Microfinance Network. The second standard is being implemented by Microfinance Rating, who are offering ratings and evaluation services of the benefiting institutions in Europe. Services offered under this program are as following. For selected beneficiaries, those who have gone through the call of expression of interest launched by the European Commission receive free of charge technical assistance consisting of training courses and TA, always tailored to the needs of the selected institution. For those microcredit providers that have signed up to the European Code of Good Conduct, we are offering trainings on the implementation of the code and how to prepare the institution to go through the evaluation process. And for the wider European microcredit sector, we are offering different types of dissemination of good practices and help desk. These are peer-to-peer training, study visits, or microfinance workshops or webinars as this one. The project ends with the end of July 2022, but the continuation will follow immediately after that. And Microfinance Center, together with other consortium members, will continue to be a implementer of the project in its new in its upcoming edition. To find out more about the EaSI Technical Assistance, you can visit our website or contact the project team directly by writing to the email addresses that you see on the screen right now. Briefly about upcoming events with Microfinance Center. In April, I can invite you only to our one webinar under the EaSI program. This will be what can microfinance learn from the EU crowdfunding, the webinar session with Eurocrowd CEO Oliver Gaita. I invite you, every one of you, on Friday, April 22nd at 10 a.m. Warsaw time. As usually, I encourage everyone who still didn't do it to become our member. There are a lot of benefits for our members. To find out more about them, just visit our website dedicated for membership, or you can contact us by writing to microfinance@mfc.org.pl or to my personal address, bartosz@mfc.org.pl. I also would like to use this opportunity to invite everyone who is interested to our annual conference. We're back to the on-site profile. The previous year we had our online conference, but this time, after the 2-year break after the pandemic, we are getting back to our on-site format, and we're going to meet in Istanbul at the end of June. To find out more about the conference, the agenda, and to register yourself, visit our website www.mfc2022.org. Briefly about the rules of conduct on this webinar. It's being recorded. The video will be available on MFC website as well as on the EaSI dedicated YouTube channel. All participants are muted at the entry. You can raise your hand or and ask to be unmuted by the hosts, or you can use the chat box to write questions or comments to the panelists or to everyone present in the webinar session. And finally, welcome to our expert for today, Artan. As usually, Artan is our expert on risk management. He's been delivering the 2 previous parts of the business continuity planning sessions. This is the 3rd and the last session of our short series. Artan, are you there? Can I pass you the voice?
Yes, good morning. How
Good
are you
morning.
doing today? Thank you for having me here today again. It's quite a pleasure to continue this series of webinars.
Okay, we can. I think we can start. It's
yeah. Let me share my screen and we'll start directly. So, as previously discussed in our 2 first webinars, we're going to continue this business continuity capacity building regarding the last part of what I think is the end of the business continuity cycle. Previously, we discussed the identification and analysis for the business continuity plans with the risk assessment and the business continuity business impact analysis, and then the designing and execution actually of the strategies, the solution, and the actual plans development. In this last webinar, we're going to discuss about the trainings regarding business continuity, its exercising and testings, and its maintenance, review, and possible improvement to the whole business continuity program, policies, and procedures. So discussing about awareness and training, each institution shall prepare an awareness program to create and to maintain a corporate knowledge about all the business continuity management concepts. This should be in tandem with a corporate training program that will promote and enhance the skills required to support the capacity building of continuity. Education and training shall be provided to all the staff and on the overall response to any unplanned disruption or interruptions. The education should be performed regularly, so all the staff should be aware of what will happen, what might happen, and what is expected of them in a situation or in a crisis or in a disaster. Also, it's very important that all the new staff which come into the institution shall be exposed to the education as part of their induction program. The business and business continuity and resilience professional and all the individual staff that have roles and responsibilities for the business continuity program should have the appropriate education and training experience required for developing and implementing the business continuity policy and program. These skills and competencies required might include general management and also technical skills. The training should be supported and initiated at the corporate level. usually senior management, boards, and then each function, business function of the possible teams created shall provide training support within its own business function. Usually, when an incident occurs, plans are given just an overview of what is included within it, but usually they are not followed up and remain, at worst case, remain unopened in the desk of the crisis teams or any high management regarding the response to possible emergency issues. So best case would be that you have already trained well and the staff is used to drill to the plans. But usually it's because the staff is not trained to follow up any plans provided by the institution, or in worst case scenarios, they aren't read at all. So having invested a lot of time to prepare crisis management plans, to prepare response emergency plans or recovery strategies or business continuity plans to support the business in its hour of need, the institution must ensure that all the team members have the knowledge, the understanding, and the confidence to apply all these plans. And that session begins with orientations, with briefings, with trainings, and it concludes with exercising and testing. So everyone from high management to the let's say call center operator or the administrators logging actions and decisions have an important role to play, and they already need to know what is expected of them. Training should start with sessions, orientations, and giving informations about the plan structures, the content, and the principle, and should be introduced with key processes. The aim of training is not to discuss or to test the staff, but to familiarize them with the plans. And usually, even if your, let's say, core stuff regarding business continuity plans, or even security staff, IT staff, and finance staff, risk staff might be naturally skilled in decision making, in communication, in information management, or situational awareness. These emergency responses are team games, so everybody need to know and to understand how their contribution fits in the overall business continuity and the overall team efforts. So each of your team should have the different skills and capabilities and role-specific trainings for team members. Ensure that everyone is ready to play their part in protecting the business, protecting life in the event of a crisis. Also, their deputies or the alternates to these plans should be included in the training to ensure a lot of strength within their business functions. So examples of training would be that you invite a guest speaker to talk about your experiences or their actual experiences on crisis management, or running a session to discuss recent crises that might have happened within your sector. And it would be quite important to have a periodic let's say trainings in order to refresh all the concepts and possible alternatives that you have regarding emergency response, crisis management, and business recoveries. What we focus on the awareness of and the trainings usually are considered from the part of the discussion about the policies of business continuity, the contribution and improvement of overall performance, and consequences of non-conforming with the requirements of the continuity system. Every business continuity plan must be supported from the top down. So senior management is quite important in user awareness. Although plan distribution and training can be conducted by business managers or by HR staff, might be very important to have someone from the top to kick off the sessions of the training and to give and to emphasize its importance. And this will have a great impact on all the employees, giving the plan more credibility and urgency. So it's very important to provide assistance regarding this part of the trainings from the top management. Also, they should provide a lot of appropriate resources to cover all current and ongoing training in order to improve the capabilities and awareness activities with the relevant skills and competences to provide all that is needed from the staff. So in order to consider what is going to be included in the trainings and awareness activities, you should consider changes to business processes, changes to legislation, or the actual and perceived threats and vulnerabilities that the business or the environment does have. And then you discuss different kind of competencies and skills for all the individuals and for all the training needed to perform this kind of situations or emergency responses. Usually, besides the training that is specific on the concepts and the procedures and the steps for business continuity, you should focus also on training staff regarding a lot of issues, especially for the staff that will develop and implement the business continuity program, usually with project management, because every kind of training or exercising or business continuity plans should be considered as a project, and everybody should have the skills necessary to implement the most appropriate or the best practices in place for these plans. In order to have the best response, you should focus also on time management trainings or emotional intelligence, diversifying on certain types of staff. For example, if you have security, if you have IT, information technology teams, if you have risk teams. So everyone should be very specific in choosing the appropriate training beside those of the business continuity in order to have the overall picture and have the overall capability in order to perform well when needed. So it's very important to design and deliver the appropriate level of corporate training activities. And then at the end, you should evaluate and report the effectiveness and the continual improvement as part of the overall reporting and reviews of the financial institution. Meanwhile, all these trainings and awareness should be concluded with exercising and testing. Regarding the definition by the EaSI standard, as I have already included, exercising is a process to train for, test, assess, practice, and improve the business continuity capability of the organization. Meanwhile, testing is an exercise whose aim is to obtain an expected, measurable, pass-fail outcome. An organization continuity capability cannot be considered reliable or effective until it has been fully exercised. No matter how well you design and you implement business continuity solutions or plans, realistic exercises should be used in order to help to identify issues, to validate assumptions that may require attention. The goal of exercising is the continuous improvement of the business continuity management capabilities and readiness by ensuring that the lessons learned from previous situations or from trainings or from awareness activities are implemented in the prevention, in the mitigation, planning, training, and possible future exercising activities. These exercises should be conducted periodically with the nature, scope, and the frequency of these exercises, which might be determined by the criticality of the application and business functions, the institution's role in the broader market operations, any possible changes in the organization's business, or possible external changes in the environment. So you need to focus on the objectives that need to do the improvement of the understanding of information sharing and incident management activities. Also developing recommended actions and procedural adjustments to address any potential problem identified. So this exercising and testing should have, as mentioned before, for training, should have the engagement and the support from senior management and the board. And they should ensure that any gaps or shortcomings reported to them are addressed in appropriate and in a timely manner. Starting with testing, these are mostly considered as efficient in order to determine whether or not various parts of the preparedness program will work. They needed to validate continuity program strategies and solutions, if they work or not, and to possibly verify that system and equipment perform as designed. This test can take several forms: individual, just one part of a software or component, or groups or teams, or complete systems with compliance with specified requirements. Also, there included testing of procedures and policies that support this kind of system, or you can have the overall part of the system for the financial institution or any organization. So this test for information technology system or for recovery strategies should be conducted in a manner that resembles everyday work environment. But considering that they might be potentially disruptive, they need to be performed on systems that mimic actual operational conditions. So considering that the exercising helps to improve the overall strength of the preparedness program and the ability of the teams to perform their roles and to carry out their responsibilities, this exercise might have a lot of benefits and They should be used specifically for testing or validating recent changes in procedure plans, to train the personnel, to clarify their roles and responsibilities, to reveal any weakness or resource gaps, to measure the improvement compared to performance objectives, to assess the capability of the overall existing resources, and to identify what will be needed next. Also, to comply with local laws, codes, and regulations. Exercises can be from different types of kinds, let's say, or of forms, manners. We start with some simple ones, the basic trainings for team members, where you can have a walkthrough or any orientation seminars, and then you go to tabletop exercises, which these are mostly discussion-based session where team members meet in an informal, in a classroom, or in the, let's say, what we discussed previously when we had the crisis management plans in a command center, crisis center, where you set to discuss the roles during emergency, responses to particular situation. You discuss the plan, looking for gaps, and to ensure that all business units are represented therein. So you need to expect that the staff or the teams during these exercises have any familiarity with the plans and are required to demonstrate understanding of how the plan works as the scenarios unfold. So you might consider even completing assessment checklists or use of log sheets in order to provide the reviews or debriefing of these kind of exercises. These are simple to organize and to facilitate. They are most least time consuming and usually are in a low pressure environment. Um, and then you can go on as the program matures, you can go on with functional exercises or simulation exercises where you validate the plans and readiness by performing duties in a simulated operational environment. These are scenario-driven activities, considering, for example, a failure of a critical business function, of certain IT system, or specific threat scenario that you have already identified in the risk assessment. So you deal with updates, requests for information as being in a real incident. Simulation allows to rehearse relevant procedures in details. How are we going to notify? How are we going to provide the escalations of reporting, the decision making, the communication between each team members and the overall business, the media response, team coordination, and possibly testing even the command center equipments and other resources. Meanwhile, when you have these full-scale exercises or the live exercises, these are more realistic way to train individuals and to exercise the potential plans. These take place on location using the equipment and the personnel to be called upon as in a real event. This can be as a small scale, for example, just one part of exercise in just one part of a department or a team, or possibly an evacuation drill, or a full scale for the whole organization, and potentially involving even interested parties regarding, let's say, emergency response authorities or any system providers or telecommunication providers, anyone that you have delegated certain processes and functions. These are usually useful for regulatory requirements or when you identify certain high risk and the response plans need to be fully evaluated regarding these changes. It's very important that during these live exercises, you need to avoid disruption to business as usual tasks and to consider any potential reputational impacts due to any issue arising during these live exercises. Potentially, when you consider as mentioned before, the tabletop exercises or the functional exercises, you can have different assumptions. You can consider them as being an open, low stress, no fault environment. You can discuss that disagreement are usually expected. Comments will be non-attributional. Any participant is free to use the information that are provided to them. Responses are based on the knowledge of current plans and capabilities and insight derived from the training provided to the staff. There is a lot of opportunity to discuss and to present multiple options and possible solutions. Problem-solving efforts should be the focus, not the identification of gaps and anything like that, but suggestions and recommendation actions are very important in this part. The scenario can be considered plausible and events occur as they are presented from the staff or the coordinators of the business continuity programs, and there are neither hidden agendas nor trick questions during the exercises. All players in the exercise receive information at the same time. So you need to focus on the certain elements that are needed to be provided during the exercises. If there are any technical issues, required system and equipment, do they work? From the procedural part, from the timeliness discussion, can procedures achieve the required recovery time objectives for each activity during the exercises? Are administrative procedures manageable for the staff and for the teams? You focus then and you evaluate if the most suitable individuals are involved in these trainings, in this crisis management teams, have the required competencies, skills, the authority, and the experience to implement the necessary steps for the responses and for the recovery. Are the right resources identified in appropriate quantities from known and reliable sources? Is the necessary information available to implement the plan? So you need to include all these elements as kind of objectives or kind of steps to be provided at the end of the exercise. Now, discussing about planning or about developing the exercise program, you need to focus that every exercise needs to be carefully planned regarding and justifying the use of resources required to implement them, because you might have low budget, low time to discuss this implementation. In order to provide the appropriate implementation, these exercises should be considered as projects using the appropriate planning steps and control associated with the good practice of an overall project management. So you need to rely on certain assessments about the needs and the current capabilities of the staff which develop the exercises, and then those that are the players within this exercise. So considering the scope and the complexity of what you are going to implement during this testing, also the competences and the skills of team designing and running this let's say testing or drills, possible drills, they should be focused on their experience and their knowledge about the actual plans. So you need to identify, as discussed in the risk assessment, the probable scenarios for emergencies and the business disruptions. These can be included different types of scenarios, as possible as natural scenarios, as an earthquake or any bad weather storms resulting in floods, or any IT disruption, cybersecurity incidents. So when you discuss these kind of scenarios, they are mostly important in order to prepare previously what are you going to explain to the staff regarding the development of the events, and then to discuss all the questions needed to do this exercising, usually for the tabletop exercises. Meanwhile, for the live exercises, you could choose to just apply what is included in the recovery plans or recovery solutions. So before this exercise, you conduct an orientation session to familiarize the team members with the preparedness plans. You prepare a schedule or a structure that demonstrates how the exercise elements are connected with them and how they do unfold. So this might be chronological sequences of steps that show when and how each event action procedure should occur. So you use this schedule to list all the anticipated participants' response to an event. You ensure that the exercises runs as planned, and you prompt the participants to refer to specific business continuity plan content or procedures to be validated at the end. So before starting, all the participants should be aware of what is required of them before, during, and after the exercise. Participants could be informed via written communication in advance, for example, an email and or any calls, and they will have then a briefing at the start of the exercise. Usually, briefing should include topics regarding the exercise aims and objectives, their roles and responsibilities, information, communication tools, the technology that will be used during this exercise, the possible actions in event of an unforeseen circumstance, and the possible and the necessary post-exercise activities. Regarding the structure of the exercise, you need to put there all the players that will be considered for the exercise. The roles for the exercise. There are the players which respond to the situation based on expert knowledge or current plans, procedures, insights deriving from the training provided to them. Then you have the observers. You might have the facilitators, the coordinators, which will provide the situation updates and moderate the possible discussions or the workflow or the steps for, let's say, for the drills. And they also will provide any information needed and will possibly respond to any question arising. Then you have the evaluators that will be needed in order to perform the post exercise reports and to use this information to build all the necessary improvement and possible corrective action plans. At the start of the exercise, everybody should be clear, and it will be communicated to all participants with an announcement or an inject that the exercise is going to start. So these events should occur in a predefined way as outlined in the exercise plan and the schedule. Communication injects, being a phone call, being an email, should include a warning to ensure that information is not mistaken for a real message. So you need to understand that when doing, especially a live exercise, you should be really clear to inform your staff that this is an exercise only. It's not a real event. And in order not to have any troubles, any bad reactions from the staff or the clients within, in order not to create any panic or any, let's say, disruption to business as usual for the financial institution. The participants need to understand also when it is necessary to pause or stop an exercise, depending on any safety issue or any actual incident or crisis that might occur during the actual exercise. So regarding the implementation of the exercise, you start with providing the actual scenario. As mentioned before, if it's a kind of an earthquake, you provide the situations as it evolves. So you discuss what has already happened and all the necessary steps in order to have the overall information delivered to the teams or to your staff. Meanwhile, you could have some kind of scenarios which are pretty alarmed. So if it's a bad weather resulting in possible floods, you can have the time to prepare. So these scenarios might need some time to unfold. So you can start discussing a scenario that have an emergency alert from authorities one day before, and you discuss step by step all the, for example, discussing the possible hours or time period of a day where you consider at the beginning of, let's say, 8 a.m. in the morning, you have the alert. You are seeing a lot of bad weather coming at noon, or during the night you will have some floodings as alerted from the authorities, and then you decide all the necessary questions to be provided to the players during this exercise, what are going to be discussed with them. So as per the scenario chosen, you can discuss, as first of all, what your organization is going to do with this disruption evolving. Who is going to alert, or who is going to call the potential crisis? If it's a crisis, is just an incident. Who is responsible and who has the authority to do that? Are you going to go to an alternative recovery site? Who is going to initiate this relocation? And so on, discussing all the steps necessary to provide the actual recovery solutions and strategy to be implemented. What are the information needed? What are the communication tools that you have in place, and how are you going to implement them? What kind of data do you need to recover? Do you have any RTO or any time objective in order to achieve the recovery solutions and the uh, uh, let's say the recovery of all business units, and then you focus only on the necessary steps that are already discussed in the business continuity plans and the business continuity solutions. And then you focus on giving the right question to your staff when it's a discussion-based exercise, and you orientate, let's say, the staff during the live exercises in order to implement these actual steps that you have already discussed in the business continuity plans for each team and for each unit, department, function, and everyone else considered during the recovery solutions. So when you have already implemented all the exercise, you need to focus on the decision to end the exercise. Who should actually have the authority to stop it or to suspend it, and then to end it. So this might be the individuals or the team management exercise, and you could consider whether the possible objectives of this exercise have been achieved or not within the allocated time framework for this exercise. And then at the end, it is very important that the participants should share their experience, possibly even immediately after the, let's say, the exercise, because it's very important to have a quick review and a quick, let's say, questionnaire or checklist of all the experience had in that the staff had in these exercises, and this should help to identify, to agree, to incorporate all the lessons learned into these business continuity policies and programs. Then all this debrief, let's say, that is provided from the players is needed to modify the plans, the procedures, the possible trainings and awareness activities to reflect all the lessons learned. So the result of these reviews are used in the post-exercise report, including possible recommendation for the improvement. At the end, the staff that is responsible for the implementation of exercises and the business continuity program should distribute to the all participants and all other relevant personnel and to the interested parties all these reports in order to accept and to address any problem raised and any lesson learned. Then the necessary management process is required to ensure that these findings are included in the organization review and considered when you update your business continuity plans. You seek the top management approval for action plans in order to implement all the recommendation for the wider program of the corporate. So at the end, you consider if the exercises had were identified, or the exercise had arise a lot of issues, a lot of significant issues during its implementation, you could retest again and do another exercise, always after you have all the corrective actions implemented regarding the problems that you identified previously. So the outcomes and the necessary achievements from these exercises should be the evaluations of the capability of the business to undertake continuity activities and to achieve the expected time objectives during the recovery plans. You validate the technical, the logistical, and administrative aspects of the plans. You confirm if the personnel is familiar with the roles, responsibilities, and the authorities needed to respond to certain incidents. You validate the business continuity solutions and the assumptions on which they are based. So you provide false ideas regarding the implementation or regarding the development of the exercises and potential scenarios uh, that might be used, and this should be more relevant to the organization in its overall. So the exercise development process needed to be reviewed in a regular time at pre-agreed intervals or following significant change as defined within the business continuity policy. So after actually completing this this measurement of the business continuity plans and recovery strategies due to exercising or testing, you need to maintain and to improve or to review all these procedures that are written and are documented within the institution. So the maintenance, as per definition, is a process to ensure that the organization business continuity arrangements and plans are kept relevant, up to date, and operationally ready to respond. When you have this up-to-date maintenance, you ensure that the institution is ready to respond to manage the impacts from incidents effectively, despite periodic organizational changes or environment changes. Maintenance activities should be effective when they are embodied within institution business as usual processes, rather than being a separate activity that may be overlooked and put somewhere in someone's desk and never looked at. So you need to carry frequent maintenance, usually depending on the nature and the expected pace of changes that you have in your business, in your processes, in your activities, or in the usual environment where you operate. When you have plans that have specific contact personal details, you need to maintain it at least quarterly. Whereas maintenance of business continuity policies or procedures, by rule or any regulations, require at least to be scheduled once a year. So this responsibility should be given to the department representative for business continuity. If you have a separate unit for business continuity, or to the risk operational, or anyone else that is responsible for the resilience of the or risk resilience of your institution. So it's very important then when discussing the maintenance or the reviews, you have put a lot of effort to create these business continuity plans and to already test these plans. So it's quite important not to let stale somewhere this this kind of document, and you need to focus on certain relevant aspect of your corporation or your financial institution in order to provide the best practices and the most accurate, let's say, definitions, standards for the improvement of this business continuity plans. So you have to review as a process for assessing and considering the suitability, adequacy, and the effectiveness of business continuity program, and identifying opportunities for improvement. You should review whether the program is up to date and especially aligned to the institution governance and strategic objectives. If it's being used, the effective resources and procedures, considering system tools, and the effective response and recovery procedures. If it's aligned or integrated in the overall response procedure of the institutions, its frequency and the effectiveness of training and awareness sessions, or if you have evaluated or how good is the performance of the staff who are directly accountable for the management of business continuity programs. So you might consider a lot of triggers for these reviews, as mentioned before: regulatory changes, new changes in processes, new threat vulnerabilities identified. You might have changes in funding or budget levels, new product or services, changing to the surrounding infrastructure, environment, any significant change in the supply chain, whatever kind of new approach or new change occur to the business, it should be a trigger for maintenance and reviews. There are some types of reviews. You can start from those that are more informal, as an audit process. It might be internal or external, considering that it's a formal, impartial review that measures an organization business continuity program against a pre-agreed standard. So auditing usually is designed to verify that the business continuity process has been followed correctly or not that the solutions adopted within it are necessarily correct. Meanwhile, when you consider a self-assessment where those that are directly involved in the management and the implementation of business continuity, you can provide a lot of new details and a lot of new changes to these documents, where the purpose actually is to review the real implementation of the program with the view to create a potential action plan for improvement. And after considering all these steps, where you focus on all the necessary changes as per regulatory requirements, as per lessons learned, or any changes in your processes or functions, then you have to focus on the management review. It's a review by top management to ensure that it aligns, the business continuity program aligns with the organizational objectives. It provides opportunity, usually for the top management, to understand the performance of actual business continuity program. As mentioned before, it should be aligned with business objectives, their adequacy to address governance. And it's quite important in order to provide a lot of information to the top management, so that they are clear and have all the capacities to provide the necessary reviews to everything that have occurred during the trainings during the exercising or any actual incident or crisis that has happened. So after all these procedures and processes, in order to identify, to implement the exercising testing, you should consider an action plan where all the gaps and deficiencies identified during the reviews or during the trainings, during the exercising, were recorded previously and they are addressed through a corrective action program. As mentioned before, you need to include a lot of descriptions about the deficiency that you identified, all the actions that should be taken, and all the recommendation as from the staff responsible for the business continuity, or the players of the exercises, or different staff from different departments, units, and business functions. You need to include all the resources required to address the deficiencies and the justification for need to correct these gaps. You should consider, or you should recommend, or the high management should recommend that this assignment should be dedicated to the staff or the department best able to address these issues. You should put a due date that is really important when you have an action plan to implement, and this should be assigned, and corrected action database should be reviewed regularly to track progress. The status of these gaps should be adapted until the deficiencies have been addressed fully. So you put there any prioritization of corrective actions, which is quite helpful, because you have quite a few time, or you might have low budget, low funding, and it is important to identify any significant gaps that should be reported to the management, and they might correct them quite quickly or anytime as possible. So you have these reports to management where all the significant gaps, or to the board, these gaps are reported along with the appropriate information to explain the problem, how to correct it, and the reason it needs to be addressed as soon as possible to gain the management support for the action plan. If it needs a high budget, you then decide, as mentioned before, in the strategies or the solution provided for the business continuity plans. If you mitigate them, if you accept these gaps, or you stop the actual, you interrupt the actual business functions regarding these deficiencies provided. Also, the management should be periodically informed of the status of the corrective actions until these deficiency gaps, these problems have been resolved. So, okay, at the end of the webinar, if there is any question, or if there is anything that should be discussed now.
Yes,
we have some time. Yeah, we have a lot of time,
yes,
actually, regarding
we have a lot of time, and actually I'm encouraging all the participants to ask questions, to use this opportunity, because previously we had short time scheduled, and we didn't have time for questions. So I think that questions regarding this part, regarding training and raising awareness about business continuity among your staff, as well as the previous part, is possible. So take this opportunity that Artan is with us and that we still have some time. I see the question regarding the presentation, regarding sharing the presentation. Yes, we can share the presentation after the webinar to all the participants. I will send you an email with evaluation form for this particular part, as well as a link to the presentation. So if there are any questions, you can also use the raise hand button, and then I can unmute you to join the discussion, or you can use the chat box if it's more convenient for you. I know that the WebEx tool is not the most popular one, so sometimes it takes some time to get used to it and to find how to move here, but still we have a few more minutes for the discussion.
Yeah, as mentioned, even the previous webinars, this plans or this engagement to the overall staff is quite helpful, especially regarding even my experience. As I mentioned before, we in less than 2 years we are seeing a lot of disruptions. We had an earthquake, we had the pandemic. We are quite away from the war, but it's felt as it's near our borders, and it's kind of an issue that reflects a lot and gives a lot of perspective what everybody should do, not just business, but even as individuals. You need to focus on possible steps that you create, especially even not regarding just business continuity awareness, but also as financial awareness. As everyone discussed, you might have considered just uh, an emergency fund for these cases, or any issue regarding where you're going to stay, where you're going to relocate if anything happens. So this kind of trainings usually, even if they are provided discussing only the actual disruption that business might have, they are useful even for the individuals, because they give a perspective of how you can react to certain situations, how you can uh, provide all your help, and create a new approach to situations or anything that you create, even in your own house or your own life. So especially trainings are very useful for this part. As previously said, trainings should not be focused only on the steps or the policies or procedures regarding business continuity or any solutions. They should be more wide open, as mentioned. Example, time management is very important, emotional intelligence, uh, usually even just training for coaching or team organizations. They are very useful in order to provide all the necessary capabilities, which are kind of soft skills, not the actual hard skill that you provide from your business as being an expert in a certain field, but they should provide a lot of soft skills to all the staff, where they can apply all their experience to any disruptions or any incident that might occur. Uh, so these are very important for each, let's say, HR staff or any kind of top management to consider when applying a lot of soft skill trainings. Uh, as in my corporate, we have a lot of trainings regarding this part, and they are very useful even just to listen to them, not just having a certificate or something like that, but they're very useful, especially for coaching. If you are a C-level or even managers of certain units, or kind of presentations and relationships that you create during these trainings with your staff or any third parties that you might have, including any IT, let's say, providers or authorities for emergency. So it would be very necessary to each, especially for the financial institutions, to have a certain budget dedicated just for trainings. And as this kind of webinars that we're already doing is very helpful to give a lot of information regarding this soft skills and an overall view of necessary steps and necessary informations provided for the staff. So
we've got a question in the chat box regarding suggestions of convincing top managements to adopt business continuity. Well, this is what you just mentioned, Artan.
Yeah.
Do you have any good
as I said before, in less than 2 years, we experienced 3 disruptions here in my country. So it's not kind of a hard task now to provide a lot of information and a lot of reports regarding the necessary steps to follow to provide any kind of budget or any kind of assistance support to create procedures or to create systems in order to have these business continuity plans or any kind of solutions provided for the business continuity system. So what we're experiencing now, it's quite huge, and I think the reality is the necessary tool to discuss when you are in the C-suite meeting or with your top management or on the board. So usually you find out all the MEMS when you have a cybersecurity incident, you have a low budget. When something happens, you focus on everything on resolving this kind of issues, and then you upgrade, you provide a system for security, antivirus, everything like that. So don't let things happen, but you should always be prepared for any scenario that you have considered. We didn't, in our, let's say, perhaps in overall business continuity plans or solutions or risk assessment, the pandemic was, especially in Europe or certain countries, I don't know, in Asia, perhaps they had previous epidemics or flus that disrupted their countries. Meanwhile, in Europe, we hadn't any kind of idea of how to deal with a pandemic, usually. So even the remote part, working from home, working remote, was a new condition. But it was implemented quite quickly, and you shouldn't wait until something happened to have a budget or to have some kind of solutions in place. So everyone that is, let's say, responsible for resilience in the business, for risk operational issues or fraud or IT security, ISO, have their role in discussing in a, let's say, kind of a steering committee or where they report to the board each possible scenario or each possible incident that might have occurred, and they need to keep up with discussions and providing all the necessary information in order to upgrade their work, their systems, and their overall protection of the business.
Yes, I see what you say, and I understand that last 2 years shows that the future and the reality is very surprising sometimes and hard to predict. So I can imagine that right now is a time when the top management should not have any issues with introducing the business continuity trainings, and the understanding of the importance of preparing your institution or your staff for different scenarios is very, very high right now. Yeah, so saying that, I think that we can wrap up our session for today. I will just remind you that the video will be available on our website, as the previous 2 parts are already there. So I encourage those of you who didn't manage to join us previously to take a look of the video. Once again, thank you for joining us today. And first of all, thank you, Artem, for
thank you. It's
being
always a
our
pleasure.
expert, yes, and for sharing your knowledge and for making it available to our participants, to our members, but not only. So
It's a
thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Have a nice day.